Hey there guys, welcome back to my playthrough of Devil May Cry 3. We're on mission 15 and we have to deal with these annoying enemies again. That was really close. So this particular part of my Devil May Cry 3 playthrough was recorded on November 9th, 2025, and it's now November 14th, 2025. And in that interim, I've managed to play more of Devil May Cry 4, and I was able to get started on Devil May Cry 5 as well, as I pointed out in a community post. And there's definitely a lot to talk about with regards to these particular games. God dang it. That upward slash is so annoying. I don't know if you guys know this, but you know how after I deflect him, he isn't attacking for a bit? There's a sound that's playing, and when the sound stops, that's when he attacks. I never actually noticed that until now. That did no damage. Fantastic. I can't tell if that did damage or if the hit detection on the perfect release was screwing me just then. There we go. These enemies take an eternity to die when they devil trigger. So this mission once again involves us collecting power sources, which are those Orichalcon fragments yet again. I don't know why they reuse this objective multiple times in the game, but you're also turning these wheels in order to change the layout of the Temenigru, so that you can gain access to these power sources. You know, I was just playing Devil May Cry 1 before starting this playthrough, and I just have to again ask, how the hell does Dante go from the man-child he is in Devil May Cry 3 to the very serious character he is in Devil May Cry 1? I mean, he's not entirely serious, but he's way more serious in Devil May Cry 1. Like, it's just such an odd transition. Like, even if Mary somehow got through the Dante, which is what I read somewhere, it really makes no sense. Just being told to take something seriously by another character doesn't mean that Dante is going to go through a radical change in his personality. I mean, I don't know how long Devil May Cry 1 takes place after Devil May Cry 3. It's just really confusing. But it's something new because in Devil May Cry 2, Dante was just so silent. Almost like they couldn't get the voice actor for certain parts. Like, the voice actor was unavailable for very long durations. But I don't know, I just feel like there's something interesting about Dante being as silent as he was in Devil May Cry 2, even if it might come across as off-putting to a lot of people who are very used to how he was in Devil May Cry 1. But I just cannot say the same with the transition from Devil May Cry 3 to Devil May Cry 1. It's always a problem with these series whenever they make a prequel, because it leads to a lot of confusion with the retroactive storytelling. Like the Batman Arkham series, I know a lot of people were very confused about a lot of moments from Batman Arkham Origins. Like, for instance, with how Batman has access to the grapnel boost, when it's not even the grapnel boost in Arkham Origins, it's a grapnel accelerator. The grapnel boost was in beta testing, as indicated in Batman Arkham City, but they use a very different name for the grapnel accelerator in Batman Arkham Origins. And then also the part where Joker and Harley met in Blackgate Prison, but in Arkham Asylum, they met there. That was their first encounter, but even in 2022, when I did that walkthrough of Batman Arkham Origins, I just had a feeling Harley was lying when she said that was her first time seeing Joker. And the developers of Batman Arkham Shadow confirmed this to be true, because they were just going through like a rehearsal, making it seem like it was their first time. Like, prequels always have trouble linking to the games that chronologically take place later. It's one of the main difficulties with doing that. But there's just something about Devil May Cry 3 to Devil May Cry 1 where the transition really doesn't make any sense to me logically. Like, on a personality side, on a character side. And I should definitely talk about the anime when I get the chance. Because again, like, in Devil May Cry 3, Mary had apparently gotten through to Dante in some way where he should really take what he's doing seriously regarding like the family matters, thinking back to what his mother did with saving him from Mundus. I guess Mary losing her mother to Arkham was also a key factor in how Dante undergoes his personality shift, because in a sense both of them lost their mothers to demons. It's also worth noting that Devil May Cry 5 also says the same thing, where Mary actually got through the Dante somehow in Devil May Cry 3, because there's a video that you can watch on Devil May Cry 5 which is basically showing the history history of Devil May Cry, and they mentioned this point in the video, and having talked about that particular video, can I just say how strange it is that Devil May Cry in 2019 got a dedicated video showcasing its history, yet Resident Evil hasn't done the same since 2009. 2009, with the release of Resident Evil 5, was the last time a game actually included a timeline of important events from the Resident Evil series. And Resident Evil Requiem would be the perfect time to reintroduce this feature, because the developers said that Resident Evil Requiem is supposed to be honoring the events of Raccoon City and the stuff that came before. So if they don't put in a timeline feature for Resident Evil Requiem, that'll be a missed opportunity. So dumb that you can't just knock him off the wall. God, these enemies are so annoying. Okay, the bigger one's dead. I really should get into the habit of doing the thrust attack whenever I make them flinch, so that I can knock them over, so long as they're not devil triggered. That one's dead. What are you doing that for? I did not press triangle multiple times, dude. These encounters with the spiders are so obnoxious and so badly designed in a lot of parts. Just with the way they push each other, with the way their hitboxes are, with the way their attacks are designed. With those stupid spiders that Dante never prioritizes, that just constantly latch onto you. And now this is the dumb mission. You have a boss fight against Mary coming up, and it's about as stupid as the boss fight against Eddie in Silent Hill 2 OG. A regular human being able to tank so many hits from your weapons in Silent Hill 2 OG. Something similar plays out with Mary's boss fight. And it's so funny, guys, like, I was looking at some videos related to the anime, and I saw a lot of the negative comments that people left regarding the anime. I really don't understand the level of hatred people have for the anime. Like, people said Dante was neutered in his capabilities in the anime, which never felt as such when I watched the anime, especially when in the anime, it's a younger Dante who hasn't yet discovered his demon heritage. Dante was still just as capable as how he was in the games. Also, people didn't like that Mary cursed a lot, but I don't see the problem with that. It never took me out of the experience when she was cursing, as it felt natural for her. I was barely paying attention to that kind of stuff anyway. And furthermore, she literally kills demons that come from hell. Vulgarity is a defining trait of hell. Being exposed to that level of graphic content alongside what she witnessed as a child when Arkham killed her mom is bound to translate into someone cursing a lot as part of their lack of restraint. Having Mary curse a lot is nowhere near as off-putting as having someone like Remake Claire cursing in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Claire doesn't feel like the kind of character that would curse a lot. Same with Jill as well. And I understand that favoring a character who doesn't curse all the time is logical and it's more preferable, but this is Devil May Cry we're talking about. And it's funny how these people criticize Mary's cursing, yet they themselves probably curse more than she does. Maturity isn't exactly a defining trait of most gamers or people that watch these kinds of anime. But moving on to another point, people found a lot of contention with the whole scene in episode 2 where Dante is effortlessly dispatching those mercenaries, but then with Mary, he doesn't use his trickster style in order to steal back the necklace and make a fool of her. But Dante doesn't do anything like that in Devil May Cry 3. I mean, he fools around with her, but he doesn't try to, like, knock her out or anything with his trickster style. And why the hell do we have a boss fight with Mary? There's no reason to have a boss fight with Mary if Dante can easily take her down. Like, why do people want to complain about that moment in the anime, but then not complain about this stupid boss fight coming up with Mary? I mean, the double standards these fans maintain, it just doesn't make any sense one bit. This is precisely why I would rather criticize Devil May Cry through my own means and analysis, like what I do at Resident Evil, rather than rely upon the opinions of biased fans. And if such criticisms happen to align with the fans' opinions, then that's fine. I mean, with Resident Evil 2 OG and 3 OG, for example, a lot of fans love these games, but they seem to gloss over a lot of the issues issues related to the acting, the screenplay, the confusing decisions by characters, the pacing, etc. And such problems undermine the supposedly deep character stories the developers are trying to tell. That's precisely why replaying both versions of Resident Evil 2 and 3 around the time my Resident Evil 4 Remake retrospective released allowed me to have a fresh mindset and see the problems for myself. And truthfully, before I replayed Resident Evil 2 OG after so long, Wary the Rook's review of Resident Evil 2 Remake allowed me to better appreciate the story and character moments in Resident Evil 2 OG. But then when I replayed Resident Evil 2 OG to do my walkthroughs of Claire A and Leon B, the game didn't feel as glamorous as Wary the Rook described. Plus, Wary the Rook made many mistakes regarding certain lore points from Resident Evil 2 OG, though such mistakes weren't based so much around the characters. The point I'm trying to make here with Wary the Rook is that in the case of Resident Evil 2 OG, I felt like the developer's vision for the story and characters were better conveyed through an edited video from a reviewer that romanticized the story, as the layman would say, rather than with the actual game itself, aside from Leon B though. And it's no different with Devil May Cry 3. I could hear comments from someone or watch someone's video on Devil May Cry 3's story and characters to see what the developers were going for, but then when I play the game, it feels like the vision is held down by certain factors like tonal inconsistencies, bad pacing, weird acting, etc. And that's through active participation in understanding the story and character moments. In fact, having mentioned this, recall that in my Resident Evil 4 Remake retrospective, I mentioned that playing Resident Evil 4 Remake allowed me to appreciate certain scenes in Resident Evil 4 OG that I previously didn't think about appreciating or not appreciating. For example, the whole moment in Resident Evil 4 OG where Ada saved Leon from Mendez at his manor, I previously didn't think anything of it, but when I played Resident Evil 4 Remake and saw how stupid Ada was for simply leaving Leon alone after briefly shooting at Mendez, this passive observation on my part allowed me to better appreciate the way Ada saved Leon from Mendez in Resident Evil 4 OG, with how she baited out Mendez to get him to jump through the window, which contributes to the complex character dynamics between Leon and Ada greatly, and also with Ada's cleverness and how she handles situations. And to talk briefly about the Devil May Cry anime, I have no doubt that when I watch it again, I'll probably find issues with scenes that I didn't find to be issues initially, especially now that I've gotten to Devil May Cry 4 and 5. I mean, I saw the Season 2 trailer and definitely agree with people that Virgil's new actor is very off-putting with his tone of voice, as it's nothing like Virgil's monotone demeanor in the games. Of course, I know that when I watch Season 2, I'll probably think nothing of it after hearing his voice multiple times, but that being said, it all depends on the quality of Season 2 and whether Virgil will say odd quotes or not. But that's definitely a fair point of criticism in terms of voice acting, no different to how bad Ada's voice acting was in Resident Evil 4 Remake. But to talk about the fans again, I think it's rational to say that most fans probably don't like the anime because of the fact that most of the Devil May Cry games released in the 2000s era, while the anime released in 2025. The 2000s era is different to the 2020s era, so because of history and maturation effects, the anime's presentation may be off-putting to such long-time fans, which is why they're quicker to jump to conclusions about its quality, which presents with problems. Of course, that being said, there was also an anime for Devil May Cry that released in, I believe it was 2007, and a lot of people were very critical of that anime, and they found it to be very boring, so maybe it's not entirely accurate what I'm saying. But getting back on track, at least when I criticized Resident Evil 4 Remake, it was through a careful and meticulous process that examined the story, characters, acting, screenplay, and gameplay properly, like what any real reviewer would do. The fact that I played Resident Evil 4 OG back in 2015 had nothing to do with Resident Evil 4 Remake's problems. I wouldn't be surprised if these fans pointed out issues with the anime that were also in the games. Like, I believe a criticism people had about the anime was with the way Hell was portrayed, and I will admit, I did find it a bit odd how the White Rabbit was able to breathe in Hell initially, though I may have missed something about that in the anime. But the thing with Hell's portrayal is that it's never consistent between the games. Hell in Devil May Cry 1 was literally just a bunch of organic tissue with Mundus' area looking like a church for some reason, and then in Devil May Cry 2, Hell is just a void. Then in Devil May Cry 3, Hell is all white with stone structures. It has some gamey chessboard area for some reason. It has blood pools. It has a mirror room. It has a room that resets time. It has pillars that look like those hexagonal rock structures in Scotland. And it has some murky river inside of what appears to be a skull mouth, which is where you fight Virgil in his final boss fight. And then in Devil May Cry 5, Hell has a clear sky and looks largely white as well. Do you see what I mean? That's why I don't understand why people criticize Hell's portrayal in the anime. It's not an issue inherent to the anime, it's an issue inherent to the games, likely because the developers didn't consider Hell's look when putting emphasis on the gaminess of Devil May Cry. As such, this was going to be an issue when translating Devil May Cry into an anime format, and I have no idea if Hell actually appears in the 2007 anime, but I wouldn't be surprised if its portrayal was vastly different to the games. There's definitely more I'll discuss about the Devil May Cry anime and also also with the games later on. But as I was saying, I just knew before I even watched the anime that there were going to be people that hated it, because a lot of the ideas it was presenting are very modern ideas, and I feel like that's just a general problem with gamers nowadays. Because a lot of gamers are old, they have a lot of trouble adjusting to new ideas that are introduced in series. Sometimes it's justified hatred. You know, like, I can hate on Resident Evil 4 Remake for the right reasons, but there are also people that hate on Resident Evil 4 Remake for the wrong reasons. Like, I hate on Resident Evil 4 Remake for the right reasons in terms of the way it handles its story, lore, characters, and gameplay designs, many things like that, but there are just a lot of people that hate on Resident Evil 4 Remake simply because they hate it. Or they're just being very, like, childish almost, with just saying, oh, it's bad, oh, it's bad. People who like Resident Evil 4 Remake are idiots, and I don't know, like, I can appreciate them hating Resident Evil 4 Remake, but the means by which they hate Resident Evil 4 Remake, I don't really appreciate in certain cases. I mean, people like Electric Underground hate Resident Evil 4 Remake, but the reasons why they hate Resident Evil 4 Remake aren't even due to actual issues. They're instead based around subjective reasons, amorphous ideas, tiresome and outdated arguments, and other perceived grievances that don't exactly have a lot of objective integrity or wider thought around them. Electric Underground's review of Resident Evil 4 Remake is hardly what I would consider a proper review, which is why when I was asked a long time ago to actually check out the video, I just cringed at the idea of doing so, and I haven't watched that video at all. It's really hard to put to words the problems with these kinds of individuals that review Resident Evil 4 Remake or other titles, so I'll just leave it at that. But like, just hating somebody because it's introducing ideas that are too modern or that the series has never done before. I mean, you know how many times the Resident Evil series has introduced ideas that were brand new and people hated it initially, but now they like it? I mean, the over-the-shoulder perspective was a vastly different idea for Resident Evil, and people eventually started liking it, despite the initial hatred for it. I don't know, it's just really hard to explain. You know, I remember a statement Capcom released a while ago, like many years ago, but it was something along the lines of, old gamers don't really know what they want, and I 100% agree with them. And it's funny because I remember Seraphim17 calling that statement very ignorant. He said that statement from Capcom was incredibly ignorant, but do you know the amount of times Seraphim17 expressed a lot of confusion what he wanted, and the amount of times his ideas just flip-flopped all the time, and the double standards he was maintaining? It was very hypocritical of him to say the kind of thing he said about Capcom, that apparently it doesn't make sense, the whole idea of old gamers not knowing what they want. And Capcom is entirely right with that statement. Old gamers really don't know what they want. They struggle to really adapt to new ideas. Of course, where do you draw the line with new ideas? Because Assassin's Creed ruined itself with how much it has destroyed its identity with the release of Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, and Odyssey doesn't even feel like an Assassin's Creed game at all. So the idea of new concepts is really difficult to apply an operational definition to, but it doesn't mean developers should just ignore such concepts. And when I watched the Devil May Cry anime, nothing about it felt egregious, and it's entirely non-canon, but obviously people will say, oh, what about the Resident Evil live-action movies? They're non-canon, but we voice a lot of hatred towards them. I mean, because the Resident Evil live-action movies objectively are horrible, despite being non-canon, and the way they make an absolute mockery of the original characters, and the nonsensical stuff they do with Alice having the ability to use telekinetic abilities. Like, what the hell is that about? And then with the way they showcase some of the BOWs as well, it didn't make any sense in the live-action movies. It was just so dumb, and just the characters themselves, they felt like they belonged in a different series. Like, there was a cowboy in the third live-action Resident Evil movie that just felt so out of place, and then the fourth movie also had a lot of characters that didn't feel like they belonged in the Resident Evil title. I mean, it felt so detached from what Resident Evil characters are, and that's something that the animated movies never had, because the animated movies are canon, and they're therefore written by the same people that handle the games. I mean, the live-action Resident Evil movies to the actual games, it's a very different connection compared to the Devil May Cry anime to the Devil May Cry games. You know, interesting thing, I saw a video of Devil May Cry 4 where someone was playing Devil May Cry 4 without using Exceed, Devil Trigger, and only limiting themselves to certain weapons and styles, and that's definitely an indication that I can do Devil May Cry 4 without having to invest time in a lot of those excessive things like with Exceed and Devil Trigger and other things. And it was a boss video, it wasn't showing the rest of the game. It was just that. So this guy was doing the bosses of Devil May Cry 4 on Dante Must Die difficulty without using Exceed, Devil Trigger, and only restricting himself to one weapon with Dante, and it was just his Rebellion sword. And it looks kind of interesting. And for most of my time playing Devil May Cry 4, I haven't been using Exceed or Devil Trigger on Hell in Hell mode. And I gotta say, guys, I prefer Devil May Cry 3 more so than Devil May Cry 4. Devil May Cry 4 has some pretty dumb moments. But here it is. This is one of the stupidest bosses ever. This boss fight against Mary makes no sense with why it's a boss fight. She's a human. And Dante's been easily brushing off her attacks despite her acrobatics and firearms proficiency. And now we're doing this arbitrary boss fight out of nowhere. So dumb. And again, it still makes no sense how Mary is able to have as much mobility as she has when she was impaled in the leg by her father in Mission 13. So dumb.
What's wrong? You tired? Then stand back. I'll take care of this.
No, you stand back.
And Dante's such a blockhead.
I told you, you can't do it. Don't you get it? This is not a human's job.
You're the one who doesn't get it. It's not something you can reason with. It has nothing to do with me being a human and you being a demon. I'm driven by the inability to forgive him. My soul is screaming, demanding me to kill him. That's enough motivation to keep me going. Besides, this is my family matter. You should stay out of it.
Okay, lady. I get the picture, but I can't just sit back and watch either. I'm pretty pissed at him too, you know. Now, get out of my way, or there'll be some consequences.
Just use your trickster style, dude.
I wasn't planning on letting any demons live anyway.
You shouldn't have to be aiming your gun like this. You could easily take her down. Why are we wasting time with this? It doesn't make sense. It's so silly. Okay, but she usually... Yeah, she's right here.
Get out of my sight! Get out of my way! Okay.
Yeah, she's quick to respond, so the way this works is you gotta get her to use her Kalina on so that you can build up your Royal Guard, because Royal Guard is super effective against her.
Get out of my sight!
Oh no!
Eat this!
I messed up. Those missiles are really good at locking onto your position. You can also shoot her bullets,
Okay.
but only when you're locked onto her. And when Mary goes up top, the lock-on has a lot of trouble staying on her.
Are you scared?
Are you serious?
No! Get out of my way! Get ready!
How are you supposed to get away from her and avoid damage when she does that? Like, she's taking all these hits and she's just shrugging it off. Just as stupid as Eddie's boss fight from Silent Hill 2 OG. A normal human like her just shrugging off all these shots. It makes no sense. And how is she also teleporting onto these platforms after she uses her grapple? Like, she actually disappears in the ceiling and just comes down on a different structure. It's very odd. But it should be, yeah. Now I gotta jump over to her by using the Stinger move. Look at her, she failed in her grapple. That happens a lot. She keeps getting stuck. This is such a dumb boss fight. It's because her grapple keeps attaching to the wall behind her. That's why she's not able to get up. So fun fact about Mary, Bingo Morihashi said that he originally intended for Mary to be older than Dante in this game, but the director Hideaki Itsuno refused to agree to this, as he believed Japanese players would prefer Mary to be younger than Dante. I do question if Mary is older than Dante in the anime, because she really does feel older than Dante, and with the way she's able to outwit him in episode 2, alongside her being a member of Darkcom and the amount of time she spent creating anti-demon weaponry, it feels more conducive to an older Mary than a younger Mary. And also, the part where Mary killed her father, Hideaki Itsuno mentioned he did not like the idea of Mary killing her father, as he believed a child should never kill their parent. But Morihashi wanted the scene where Mary would kill her father, along with Dante defeating Virgil, as they would serve as themes of the game. Too bad you can't ride the missiles like he did in that cutscene after Cerberus. But as I was saying, to balance this, Morihashi wrote a scene leading up to Arkham's death where Lady said that Arkham was her responsibility, which is what we saw in that one cutscene. This is so dumb, this implementation. What were they thinking with this? And people want to criticize the anime? Really? When we're doing this? Plus, like in the anime, Dante was still quite young. He's just as young as his Devil May Cry 3 counterpart. Just as immature. And Mary was stealing his necklace, and that threw him off his game because he's very tied to that necklace. And he also wanted to question her. That's how I viewed that whole moment when he first encountered Mary. Not to mention, Mary pointed out his demon heritage through the fact that she used those anti-demon rounds and they affected him. Ooh, also, I totally forgot to mention, there's a really stupid thing that happens with Mary in this boss fight, where you can use Royal Guard against her, but you'll get iframes for no reason, and so you'll waste your charge, and she won't take damage. I don't know why that occurs sometimes. That's why you gotta use the Royal Guard when she's in the startup frames, preparing her Kalina on, because if you use it at any other point, she'll get iframes. It's so dumb. But as I was saying, in the anime, Mary literally revealed his demon heritage through the fact that she used those anti-demon rounds on him, and they affected him, which means he had the demon blood. But Dante denied the idea because, of course, it's a common thing with Dante where he tries to deny the fact that he has a demon heritage. And also, everyone was after his necklace, and so when Mary was able to take the necklace, it threw him off his game. And these two factors led to him dealing with Mary the way he did, and then that was also where Mary was able to outwit him as well, since Dante wanted to question her. It's like, I don't understand what the problems with that scene were in people's eyes. Also, I remember somebody criticizing the whole moment in episode 2 where Dante is taken down by a taser, but I mean, in Devil May Cry 1, Dante is incapacitated by Trish's electricity. Mary even said in the anime that they don't normally take demons prisoner, but they do have the tech for it for special circumstances. So obviously that taser was custom made for demons specifically. Now, to be fair though, in Devil May Cry 1, Dante was impaled by Alastor, which is an electric weapon, so it's probably a bit strange that he would be affected by Trish's electricity. But regardless, I don't see why it would be odd to have him be subdued by a taser custom built for demons. And moving on to another tangent, I do find it interesting how in the anime they show Mary has all this technology that allows her to be more mobile, like with her jet-propelled boots that allow her to gain greater height and actually move faster. That's a pretty cool idea for someone who's human and who's a demon hunter. That certainly has more sense than with the way Mary is portrayed in Devil May Cry 3, and how she is able to be mobile after being impaled in the leg. It just makes no sense. And then also with the boss fight we have against her, why is that a boss fight? That doesn't make sense. And she's conveniently a descendant of that priestess Sparta sacrificed in order to seal the human and demon realms. Like, that doesn't make any sense either. I'll talk more about that in the next part.